Hi, I'm Lisa, and I'd like to welcome you to Miss Lisa's Learning Hub. Today we're going to continue our conversation on sentences, focusing on compound subjects, compound predicates, and compound sentences. So let's kind of break it all out and see how they are different. First up, a compound subject contains two or more subjects. The subject is always either a noun or a pronoun. So instead of just finding one thing in the sentence, one person who's doing something, we will find two, possibly three. All right, but they only share one verb. And let's look at an example. Sarah and Evan played soccer after school. Who is doing the action in these sentences? Who is this sentence about? Well, it is about Sarah, and it's also about Evan. So since we have two subjects, Sarah and Evan, this is considered a compound subject. If we only had one subject, it would be considered simple. Since there's two, it's a compound. So this is one sentence, it's a complete thought, but it has two subjects, compound subject. All right, compound predicate, on the other hand, contains two or more verbs. And a verb is either an action word or a being verb. Being verbs like was and were. They share the same subject. And the example for that, the teacher explained the lesson and gave homework. So let's look at what's the action in this sentence. What is being done? Okay, so in this sentence, she explained and she gave. Okay, only one person did this. The teacher did both actions. So we have one subject, two predicates. So they are compound predicate. Finally, a compound sentence contains two complete thoughts joined by a conjunction. And the conjunction can be words like and, or, but, so, things that would take two sentences and put them together. A sentence is a complete thought. Starts with a capital letter, ends with some type of punctuation. And usually the punctuation is either a period for a statement, a question mark for a question, an exclamation point if it shows excitement. So let's look at our example sentence. I wanted to go outside, but it started to rain. Two complete sentences. Here's the subject in this sentence, I. This is the verb wanted to go outside. So this can be a complete sentence right here. Here's another one. It started to rain. Started is the verb, it is the subject, and they are connected by this conjunction but. So when you take two sentences that can stand all by themselves and you put them together with a conjunction, then it's called a compound sentence. A lot of information. Let's do some practice. All right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to identify the compound subjects in the sentence. So sentence number 1 says, Lily and James are going to the concert. It's a compound subject, so we're looking for two subjects. Do you see them? Do you see the nouns in the sentence that are telling us who this sentence is about? Okay, Lily is going to be one, and James is the other one. So that's our compound subject in this sentence. The pencil, pen, and eraser were missing from my desk. What is this sentence about? Remember, a compound means it's more than one. So it can be two, it can be three, it can be even more than that, but usually we stop at 3. This particular sentence has 3. Do you see them? All right, if you said pencil, awesome. Pen, yes. And eraser, these are all subjects. Now you might have noticed I put a comma here between a pencil and a pen. Whenever we're listing things out, we always put a comma between the things we're listing. Then you might say, well, why didn't you put one right here before the and, because the list goes on. You can put a comma there, but it is not necessary. It used to be a requirement, but they kind of backtracked on that and said this is an optional comma here. You don't have to put it before an and. All right, last one. My mom and dad cooked dinner together. All right, you look at that one. Take a moment and pick out our compound subject. You see it? If you said mom and dad, great job. All right, coming down to compound predicates. That means we need 2 actions or being verbs. We visited the museum and ate lunch at the park. What are the things we did in this sentence? All right, so the first thing we did was we visited, and then we ate. All right, let's go on to a few more practices. All right, Jake danced and sang at the party. Can you find the action words in this sentence? Can you find our compound predicate? You said danced and sang. You did a great job. And finally, the baby cried and kicked his legs. Now try it again. Yes, cried and kicked. All right, for these are all multiple sentences, compound sentences. And we're going to use the words so, or, and, or, but to put these two individual sentences together to make them a compound sentence. Now you can see when we start our second sentence, it has a capital letter. That's because it says I. If these were two separate sentences with a period here and a period here, then this would be capitalized as well as this. But when we put them together and make them compound, the second sentence does not start with a capital. All right, I was tired, blank, I stayed up to finish my book. I was tired, what is a good thing to put them together with? Yes, but. I was tired, but I stayed up to finish my book. We can watch a movie, we can play a board game. So we can watch a movie, which one do you think? Yes, or. So either or, we can do this or that. All right, we got a few more over here. All right, he did not study, he failed the test. All right, so we have to choose between so, or, and, or, but. He did not study, he failed the test. It's kind of like a cause and effect. He didn't study, so he failed the test. And finally, the sun was setting, the sky turned orange. All right, the sun was setting and the sky turned orange. All right, guys, kind of a lot of information, but it's all pretty straightforward. Remember, compound simply means two or more. So a compound subject, two subjects, a compound predicate, two verbs in the sentence. A compound sentence is going to have two complete sentences joined by a conjunction. All right, if you enjoyed this lesson and found it helpful, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.